G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing David Ridden from Grandad Jack's Distillery based in Gold Coast, Australia, just out of Brisbane. Thanks for your time today, David.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. Chris Macklin, who's the founder of a rum distillery in the Gold Coast that I've just started chairing the board of and have invested in, put us in touch. Thought you'd be a great guest to come on for our audience.
Oh well, thanks to Chris. Hopefully we live up to expectations.
Yeah, well, I popped into Grandad Jack's a couple of months ago when I was up in the Gold Coast, and Bolter and Black Hops. It seems like there's a really good community there amongst the brewing and distilling industry in southeast Queensland.
Yeah, it's very strong. It's a fantastic community to be in. It's coming from other businesses over the years, the craft distilling and brewing industry is just so friendly, and you tend to, everyone works so closely together. It's, there's no one, I haven't met anyone that thinks someone else is a real competitor or they don't want to give away any information. It's a really good business to be involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. I was CEO of Lark Distillery, the first one when the family sold out. And I remember I got a board of 5 directors, probably 3 of them were accountants, big partners at KPMG, et cetera, and ex-partners. And sitting around the table one day and they said, why are we talking to our competitors? Why are we helping our competitors? Why aren't we, trying to kill them? And it was Bill Lark who really brought that to the industry, of that community sense and helping each other out, which is then helped the entire distilling industry in Australia lift up to an international level. So it's great to see that flowing through in brewing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see some of the statistics coming out in the last few weeks, the growth, 240% growth in employment in the distilling industry across Australia. So it's a huge growth. I think, it's fair to say we did start at a lower base, but if you look at distilling at 240% and brewing at 50%, it's grown rapidly.
Yeah, I read that just this morning, actually. The Australian Bureau of Statistics did the census, released some figures the other day, and one of those ones really stood out. Over the last 5 years, as you said, jobs in the distilling industry has grown 240% in 5 years is huge.
Yeah, huge. Yeah.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
We're a super premium spirits manufacturer. And we have a very unique model. We're a direct-to-the-consumer model. We've been that since the very, very beginning, which is very, very different to, I would say, 99% of the other spirits producers in Australia. It's our model. Some people disagree with it. Some people are not sure about it. Some people I've seen change or thinking about changing to it, especially in the last couple of years. So we really focus on the super premium end of the market. We're not in this game to be a big volume player. We have a big focus on export, but our export is all around that super premium end of those markets in those countries we're in, like Norway, North America, Singapore, Malaysia, New Zealand. So we really focus on that super premium end of the market. And the big, what we do on a daily basis is about experience. We're a brand that's about experience. There's plenty of people make great booze out there, but we're really storytellers that just happen to make great booze.
Yeah, fantastic. Just on that premium in different countries, I was listening to a podcast yesterday when they were talking about SaaS businesses, but in any business, they said that you should be looking at regionalizing your pricing. So this is a US cast, and they said, so for example, in Norway, they generally pay 30 to 40% above what someone would pay in the US, and that's after GST or VAT is taken out. So there are markets out there that are happy to bear a higher price.
Yeah, I think every market, there's a segment in every market around the world, including the US, for that super premium end.
Yep, totally agree.
The US, everyone says the US is the hardest market in the world to crack into. Doesn't matter who you are, what product you got, and they're dead right. It is very, very difficult. Costs a lot of money, but you really have to find what market you sit in. And I think as artisan or spirits producers here in Australia, you got to be really careful that you don't head down, especially if you're thinking you're going to go into a market like North America. You got to really understand what it is you're going for. Who is the customer you're going for? What's the end goal? And then you really have to align yourself with the right importers and distributors that are going to get you in front of those particular customers.
Yep.
And when you're doing something that's at that super premium end, you're not talking big volume, but you're talking higher margin.
Yep.
You can really afford to work with a better distributor, a smaller distributors that really understand the super premium space. And that doesn't mean you're going to be in every bar, every top restaurant in the country. You're going to be really focused on those places you want to be, but you 100% need that relationship with that distributor importer.
Yep, totally. I was in the US actually 2017, launching the New Zealand whiskey collection over there, and took us years to find the right importer for a start, and then distributor, because you need distributors there's like 50 states. It's an absolute clusterfuck, as you well know. All the different licensing laws, cross-border, etc. But it's like anything. You've got to do your research, get the right partners, and you can crack that market.
Yeah, I agree. You got to have the right partners if you're playing the international game. You have to have the right partners.
Yeah. And you've got two venues. I've only been to the one on the Gold Coast. So I left Brisbane about a month ago and then realised that you had a site in Brisbane as well.
Yeah, we've got a site in Brizzy, in a place called Albion, which is just sort of the airport end of the city. I don't know, a lot of people know Brecky Creek Hotel, which is right on the river. We're not far from there, just around the corner. It's a little industrial area that's very similar to where we are in Miami on the Gold Coast. It's like a little industrial hub in the middle of a whole lot of apartment, housing, development. We really focus on demographic. For us, demographic is the number one thing we do when we look for venues. And our brand, we have to be where the demographics right, else it doesn't work. And so our demographic is really, late 20s into the mid 30s, couples that have good jobs, good income, no kids, usually have a dog. They live in apartments, so either own them or rent them. Most of them rent them, so that they love really spending their money on things they really enjoy and experiences. And because a lot of them are renting property or leasing property, they don't care when the mortgage rates go up. They don't care when the economy changes. As long as they've still got their income, they really enjoy spending money on those really, really high-end experiences. And then the other end of our demographic is the older person. So, mum, dad, their kids have grown up. Their kids are in their, late 20s, early 30s. One or both of them are still working. They have good incomes and they love experience, and they don't mind spending money on premium products. So we really focus on that wherever we go. And Albion's that spot.
And what spirits do you make?
So we make a range of gins, actually 4 different gins: vodka, coffee liqueur, whiskey, all types of whiskey, rye, our sort of style of bourbon, single malts, peated. So pretty much everything. I think at the moment we're the only distillery in the country that releases 2 brand new spirits every single month of the year.
Wow.
From our limited releases. We have a big R&D focus in our business, so it allows us to come up with some really great one-off spirits. We do them in, going with that premium end of the market. We do them in real small batches. Normally they'll be between 100 and 150 bottles only. These days they sell out within 7 days, sometimes faster, sometimes 2 or 3 days. So we produce a limited release spirit that we produce in our distillery in Brizzy, that just you can only buy in Brizzy or online. And then we produce another one each month for our limited release out of the Gold Coast distillery that you can only buy there. And it works really, really well for us. It allows us to keep those core customers, those people that really love our brand, coming back month after month after month. We have some customers, a big group of customers that have got every single thing we've ever made. So that's a part of our model, right? We're in the last 4 and a bit years, where our model's been what I call go narrow but deep. So we've been really, really narrow and deep in the communities that we're in to build that following, to build that sense of community around our brand. And it really, really works well for us.
And can you give the audience an example of the pricing of some of those whiskies? Let's say how old and what size bottles?
Yeah. So for a whiskey, we've never sold a whiskey under $400 a bottle.
Yep.
The latest whiskey we just released was a peated single malt, 500 ml bottle, $420 a bottle. The size will vary, and lately they've been around sort of the 150 bottle mark. We won't go in the future more than 250 is really on a release is where we'll stop it. But they'll all be over $400. In fact, the first release we ever sold was a single malt, and it was $400 a bottle, sold out in 2 hours. So we have a real collective, and people. In fact, I was talking with John O'Keefe from Diageo in Sydney a few weeks ago, and he told me, Dave, I don't understand how our Diageo brands, they tell me in Australia we can't sell a bottle of whiskey for $400. How come you little guys can in Queensland? And I told him, well, because we're not selling just whiskey. Selling the experience. We're selling the story behind it, and that emotion comes out in the consumer. And the way we release it, and the group of people we have that follow us and just love our spirits, that's what we're selling. It's more than the spirit in the bottle.
How did you start out?
We started out. I had a business before Grandad Jack's called Cloud9 Events, and so we had Australia's 2 biggest mobile bars. We're 2 B-double trucks that all hydraulically folded out to big 2-story buildings. So a lot of our customers were bigger brands. So Lion Nathan, Carlton United, Diageo, Cooper's Brewery down in South Australia. When they would sponsor an event, whether it was golf, or tennis, or car racing, or whatever it may be, festivals, we were the person that took this big event activation vehicles to their sites. So I sold that business to another events company in Melbourne back in 2017, and thought I might retire. But that was just a thought. It didn't last very long. I think in business you work your ass off to get to what you think is the end goal. And once you get there, it's not the end goal. You realize really quick that that's not actually what you've been doing. It's not what drives you. It's not what motivates you every day to do what you do. And I found really quickly that I was real bored. All my mates were still working, and I could only go down the beach so many times a day, right? So I really got super bored. And I'd always wanted to do something for my grandfather. He was born back in 11th of June 1919, and his dad passed away before he was born. So he lived a life in those areas where you didn't get schooling. You had to survive. He had to left his mum with a small family farm. So him and his mum were, trying to keep this family farm going. And he had this amazing story of working literally for himself his whole life and surviving and building a family around him. And we used to sit in his back shed having a few drinks. And in fact, in our family, when you turn 13, when my grandfather was alive, every male in the family had to turn up my grandfather's for their first whiskey at 13. And trust me, at 13, that's not the best experience you have.
No.
But we all survived. And I still remember it very vividly today, that first little sip of neat whiskey with my grandfather. And so he had this amazing story, and I'd always wanted to tell it over the years. In fact, what really got me going was at his 90th birthday, my mum and her 2 sisters wrote This Is Your Life book, and they presented him with his life story. And literally when I heard them present that and read it, I thought, I have to tell the story. I have to. And we thought about lots of things. He was a barber for 47 years, and I thought about doing a museum, a barbershop museum, and all sorts of things. But then at a family barbecue in November 2017, I was with my son. He was a car mechanic for BMW. He's now our head distiller, and still, I think, the youngest commercial distiller in the country. Definitely the youngest commercial distiller to ever win gold medals in the Australian Distilled Spirits Awards, Gin Awards, London Spirits competition.
How old is he?
He's 25 now. He was 21 when we opened.
Wow. Yeah.
I said to him, look, I haven't got the brain power to become a distiller.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to run the business and build the brand. But I reckon we should build a distillery, because what better place to tell my grandfather's story that inside a distillery because he loved the whiskey.
Mm.
And that's what it was. We literally started off, we weren't interested in distilling at all. It wasn't a dream for us to be distillers or own distilleries. We just thought that that'd be a cool place to tell his life story. So we'd build this distillery. But what happened very quickly, my son, like everyone does, all a bit of a home distilling kit, and he started making some stuff at home. And for gin, for example, I'd never drunk gin in my life. I was a traditional beer drinker, wine guy,
Yep.
And so he started making some stuff, and it started tasting good. And I was looking around, and when we started, and it wasn't that long ago, just under 4.5 years ago, there wasn't a lot of places you could go, or that many people, especially in Queensland. There wasn't that many artists and producers or distilleries that we could talk to about it. So my son went down to Tassie and looked around down there, and everyone was super helpful and friendly in the distilleries. And he come back, and then we realized, gee, we better actually get serious about this because it looks like it's going to cost a lot of money. And we thought, well, we'll just rock into it. It should be right. We'll tell some stories. If we don't make spirit that's any good, who really cares? Because it's not our focus. And then we started to get serious. So I've been lucky. I've done some work in the US and been traveling and working and living in the US over the years for short periods of time. And every time I was in the US, I used to love going to craft breweries and craft distilleries in the area where I was staying. And so I knew that there's a whole sort of ecosystem of artists and producers in the US that I really enjoyed and loved. So that was November. We decided to do it. Boxing Day 2017, we jetted off to the US, and the idea was that we wanted to, one, talk to some distilleries and actually see and find out what the hell we needed, because we had no clue what we needed, and two, we needed to find somebody that would fit with our culture and that we could bring back to Australia to teach Luke how to go from a really amateur home distiller to a full-blown commercial distiller faster than anyone else had ever done it. And we're really lucky. We visited about 40 distilleries across California and New York State.
Holy shit.
While we're there. And one morning, we're in San Diego, and we're at this little whiskey distillery called San Diego Distillery. And the guy had a heap of little barrels around. It was like 9 a.m. in the morning. And this guy called Trent Dalton, and he's just an absolute legend. Makes some beautiful rye whiskies and single malt whiskies, bourbon style whiskies. And we were tasting whiskey out of his barrels, and he was just a great bloke. And so I turned and said to Luke, whispered to Luke as he was going to get some more whiskey out of a barrel for us to taste, this is the bloke we need. We need to get this fella back to Australia with us. He's gonna really be able to, supercharge our experience in distilling. And so we asked him, he goes, no, I can't do it because I'm a psych nurse and I only do this in the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. But he goes, there's this young fella. And when we call young, this guy was already, in his late 20s. There's this young fella called Blake Heffernan, and he works for this distillery downtown San Diego called You and Yours. So he'd be your guy. And you know what it's like, in our industry, lots of people know each other and you sort of know people around. So we rock into this distillery, and just as we get there, we see that they're doing a tour. So we rock in, we say, can we get on this tour? And so, oh yeah, there's 3 spots left. So we got on the tour, and we're going through the distillery, and there's this black Labrador, and the Labrador's like knocking into everyone's legs, wanting a pat. And the tour guide says, oh, that's our distillery dog, Blake Heffernan's dog, our head distiller. And so I like, well, where's this bloke? So I stepped back away from the tour and then find this guy where the dog went to. I said, Blake Heffernan. And he said, yeah. I said, well, Trent gave me your details this morning. Can we have a chat? So I said, look, can I send you an email? And that afternoon, we sent him an email. I sent him an email, say, hey, this is what we're about. This is our story. I want to tell my grandfather's life story inside a distillery, but we don't know anything about distilling. Can we meet with you? He sends back. A couple of days later, we meet him in a craft brewery just around the corner from his distillery. And we buy a beer. I'm up at the bar, buy 3 beers, one for myself, him and my son. And we sit down. As soon as we sat down, he goes, whatever it is, I'm in. If you don't know what we're asking. He goes, I've read the story. That's it. I'm in. Mm. And at that point in time, we didn't realize the relationship that he had with his grandfather.
Right.
So that's what happened. So Blake, we flew Blake over. Blake worked with Luke to design the still. We got our first still made from Artisan Stills in the US. purely because Blake was there. He could negotiate around and work around what we needed. So he really designed the still for us, put Luke in the right atmosphere, and then we flew over. He stayed in our house here. He's been back a few times now, but literally they just worked. Blake and Luke just worked, day after day, night after night, for literally a pretty small period of time before we opened. It was only probably like 9-10 weeks.
What? Really?
Yeah, really. But they worked all day, all night. They were just there working, and Blake was an amazing, amazing mentor for Luke. And so we come up originally when we opened, we had 3 gins. We had our 2 Pencils gin, our London Dry. Our greenhouse gin is what we call our gateway gin. So our botanical gin, lemon myrtle, grapefruit peel. And then we had our 65 miles, our Navy Strength gin, which is what we call our whiskey drinkers gin. And that's what we opened with. So we didn't know anything about it. But we had a vision, and we said, well, we don't know anything, but we need to find someone who does. Because what I'd seen during the process is I'd seen other little distilleries around Australia starting up. And I've seen that they were like, people, and the same thing still happens today, right? They have a day job and they start a distillery. And to me, I've worked for myself for 30 years now. And one thing I've learned in business is if you do it half-ass, if you think you're going to transition, it's a long game.
Yeah,
it takes a long, long time, and you end up dumping a shitload of money and not really getting a return.
Yeah.
For us, we understood that it was a big investment, but we understand that we have to make that happen really rapidly. So that was a game. We knew heading to the US that we had to achieve this, otherwise we couldn't make it happen.
So in less than 3 months, you had opened.
We opened our first distillery. So in less than 3 months, Luke was trained and he was distilling. From Blake had trained him up. We took possession of the building on the 15th of January 2018 on the Gold Coast, and we completely rebuilt it, designed 3 gins, and opened the 24th of August 2018, 8 months after we got it. So I think at that time, there wasn't any distillery in the country that opened in 8 months.
I haven't. I was one of the co-founders of the Distillers Institute. We've got over 420 students in our online courses, and 10% of those have gone on to open distilleries. And obviously, I know the industry fairly well here in Australia for the last 10 or 11 years, but I've never heard of anyone doing that anywhere near 8 months. Well done.
And we bet that when we opened our Brisbane distillery. We did Brisbane in 3 months and 5 weeks.
Wow.
A little bit over 4 months. So it's crazy. We knew a lot more then, obviously, than we did at the beginning. But I think it's just about the drive. I think any business, you need the drive. And if you have the drive to open, and you know that it's a business where you're investing a lot of money up front and you're taking a real punt, then you need to, one, have a really good plan and stick to that plan, and don't let things get in your way. And that's what we're good at in our business. We're really good at where that plan is. We get very tunnel visioned on it, and we really focus on it and put the people and the systems around us to make sure that we get there at that time frame. To me, there's no in our business. That can't, no, doesn't exist for us. Whether it's changing legislation to make it easier for distilleries, or whether it's dealing with councils or whatever, there's no. It's just, my grandfather always used to say, you got to understand the rules so you can play the game, and that's really what it is.
Yeah, that's great. And back in 2018, how old were you when you launched this business?
I was how old was I?
A bit over 4 years ago.
In my 40s, yeah.
And did you have another business before the mobile bar truck one? Any other?
Yeah, I was in business with a partnership with a couple of other blokes. We imported products from in a totally different industry. So we're the importers for the Oakley racing product in Australia. So the racing car overalls and boots and gloves and safety gear. We also imported Italian watches and a whole lot of stuff. We're really importers, distributors. And I ran all the commercial side of that business, so the sales team, the branding, and before that, I did a little stint. I did a 5-year stint working for corporate in Sydney. I worked for a public company in Sydney called ERS, and then I left there. I just prior to that, I was working for myself.
Yep.
And then got enticed into corporate, and I've got to say, there's lots of things there I learned that I wouldn't have learned if I hadn't done that sort of time in corporate, especially in public companies. That definitely helps us these days. but I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't me.
No, not in your blood. And roughly how long was that, the Oakley business, and how did you exit that? Did you
We're
sell it?
about 12. I was about 12 years there. I started it with nothing in my garage in Sydney, and then it grew and grew and grew, and then we eventually Queensland had a like a grant to try and bring business into that new sort of hub between Gold Coast and Brizzy, Yatala, that Yatala area, and then we moved with those grants that were available and moved the whole business to Queensland, which is the best thing we ever did. It was way better. And then my two partners had a different direction they wanted to go in the business, and that wasn't the direction that I seen it going in. And so we agreed to part ways, and that was the end of it. I went out in the events business.
Great. And how long was the events business going before you sold in 2017?
I started that 2011.
Yeah.
So not that long.
Yeah. Fantastic. And do you have any key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of Grandad Jack's over the last 4 and a bit years?
I think when you think about, we started at ground zero in August 2018, where more than 180,000 people come through our distilleries. Most of those, because the Brisbane distillery is only just over a year old, so most of those through our Gold Coast one. We've had growth 35% year on year.
Great.
And remember, that growth is 98% of everything we sell here in Australia is direct to the consumer.
Right. Yeah.
We sell very, very little wholesale to bars, restaurants. We sell nothing into any of the major retailers, and we never will. So I think that growth, when we've been, as I said before, a business that's like very narrow but deep in the community, has been phenomenal. And we've had over 550 5-star reviews in our venues.
Wow, that's great.
When we talk about experience, that's what we focus on. There is a lot of distilleries in our country making great spirit, not just one or two. There's a lot. I think the difference is the business models and the brand.
Yep.
And like in any business, you can have people that are really, really passionate about making the product, whether you're a car mechanic or you're an engineer or you're a distiller, right? And you can be so passionate about distilling. But I tell you 100%, the hardest bit in this industry that we're in is selling it.
That's right.
The easiest bit's making it.
Yep.
Everything outside of making it is the hardest bit.
Yes.
So it's been really rewarding, but we're nowhere near where we want to be yet.
And how many full-time equivalent team members did you start with, and where are you at now?
We started with 2, just myself and my son.
Yep.
And my wife and my son's partner, Luke's partner, Jess, would come in the weekends or after work and give us a hand. But I remember the days when we were standing in our distillery, cellar door, bar, tasting room, whatever people want to call it these days. And there was just 2 of us there, and there'd be no one in the place, or there'd be 1 person or 2 people, and then you might get 5. And I remember that went on for months and months and months, but we just kept the brand, we just kept the experience, we just keep grafting away at it. And these days that doesn't happen. You've been there, you probably weren't the only person in the place, but and same with our Brizzy distillery. So I think you just got to, if you trust in your model and your plan, and you just make sure you execute it properly, and you're not afraid to change things if they don't work. The great thing about having privately owned businesses is that we can change tomorrow.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait 3 months for someone to make a decision somewhere else. We can just make that change. And I always say to people, change. Don't be scared to change. You can always change back.
Yeah.
But if it's not working where you want it to be, and it's not getting the right spot, keep changing, because there's absolutely no doubt at some point you'll hit the sweet spot and you'll find exactly what you need to do. And that's what we did.
Your comment there on the 2 of you standing around at the bar and no real customers early on reminds me, I did a podcast, episode 15, with a good friend of mine in the US, Bill Welter, who owns Journeyman Distillery. Similar to yourselves, they make a lot of different spirit types, but they're about to open a second distillery, massive. But they're in this town in Michigan, population of 300 people, really tiny. It's near the big tourist areas, near the lakes, etc. But on the cast, he tells a story where in the early days, they were, no one was dropping in. So one day he literally chased some customers down the road and said, no, come in and try our spirits. So you just got to be persistent.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
And how many full-time equivalent team members are you up to now?
We have 17.
17. Great. Yeah. Fantastic. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I haven't yet. I think I learned from when I sold that business back 2017 that it's not a thing in my mind. It's not how my brain works. I think uh, I really don't know when or if ever I'll feel like we've succeeded, because we never look back. We're always looking forward. We're looking at what opportunities are there, looking at the market, what the trends are, all these things. I think though on a different level of success, I think when I walk into our distilleries and I hear other people telling their friends our story. So I think that's definitely a big success for us. If we've been able to build a brand that people are they've been in and they're bringing their friends back and they're telling the story of why the 65 miles is named what it's named, and that, that's Grandad Jack on the wall. And I think that's a big success. It's if you interpret that as a business success or just a brand success,
Yep.
I suppose it depends on who you are, but it's a success.
Well, that was the next question. What does success look like to you? You say that's what it is?
It's definitely, if you can have in this industry, because we run a really unique model, right? Really, we're a manufacturer from Monday to Friday, and then from Friday to Sunday, we're a hospitality business. So there's two different things, and I think there's very few hospitality businesses that can get to a point where their staff just absolutely love what they do and have passion and to tell the story of the brand, and our guys do that. So when I see our Google reviews and I read them, and you'll never see a Google review about Grandad Jack's that talks about our spirit on the first sentence. Every single time it talks about how good the staff were, how good the experience is, and how cool the buildings look.
Yep.
And then at the end they'll go, oh, and the spirit was nice. So that's to me as a brand guy, that's what I call success.
Yeah, I love your brand. I love your brand. And that's the next question. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
Make sure your brand's the most important thing and you spend the time on your brand. Brand is everything. Anyone can make a product. Not everyone can build and design a great brand. And if you're lucky enough like us to have a true story, it's even better. I've worked on brands that we make up the stories for the brands, and they're okay as well. But if you haven't, and if you have to make up the story, make sure you really think about it. Get involved in it. Think about, okay, if I wanted this amazing story, what would it look like? And sort of write that up yourself, and then build your brand around that and make it work. For us, as I said, we're lucky. It's a true story. I didn't write it. My grandfather lived the life that wrote the story. So it's really easy for us to tell it. But I think don't ever underestimate how important the brand is. Other people ask us, how many people do we have in production? And every time I tell them the balance, they look at me like, how? We have more than double the amount of people in marketing and brand than we do in production.
Yeah.
It's so easy. It's so easy to deal with. The production is really easy compared to everything else. So
yeah,
brand is by number one the most important thing for us.
Yeah, I totally agree. It reminds me of one of my favorite Peter Drucker quotes. Excuse me. Because the purpose of business is to create a customer. The business enterprise has two and only two basic functions: marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results. All the rest are costs. Marketing is the distinguishing, unique function of the business. It's something really rammed home to me 5-10 years ago.
Yeah,
how important brand and marketing is.
Yeah, absolutely, and unfortunately, that's what I see. Right, I see. I want our industry to grow and grow, and we've grown this 240% in people working in the industry. When we started in Queensland, there were less than, I think there were 8 distilleries, including Bundy Rum and Ben Lee.
Wow.
We'll hit 50 here by Christmas of the ones I know about, and there's bound to be ones I don't know about, right?
Yeah.
So what I don't want to see is I don't want to see people failing. I think we have a real opportunity to be a real superstar in the Australian economy, especially our export. There's a massive opportunity for export around the world.
Yep.
And even from what small distilleries, I hear things people say, well, you've got to do big volume to be able to export. That depends what market you're exporting in. If you want to be in big box stores in the US, then yeah, you have to do big volume. But if you want to be in a super premium space or you want your niche, you don't have to have big volume. Literally any distillery in this country can be a really niche, fantastic exporter. So we just got to make sure that we all share the knowledge we've gained, and that we try and help as many people in the industry as can to be successful. Because we need that, right? We need to be bigger than wine. In my opinion, we need to be bigger than wine, and we need to do that. We need to make sure that we're sharing, the information we've all been able to gather. We're sharing the data, and that way we'll get there. But I also think that we've got to be really, really careful. If we're not careful, then we'll lose so many distilleries in the next couple of years. And I think the challenge we have is with excise in this country is that, I planned back at the beginning, I thought we'd hit excise at, 2028, 2030, $100 a litre, right? We're going to hit it way before that.
Yes.
So if we look at the models that people are using, and unless you've got heaps of money, if you've got heaps of capital and you're just going to push money in and you're going to try and build volume. But the reality is, if we look at the ADA, Australian Distillers members, right? If you took the whole lot, it's my opinion that in that whole lot, we've got about 3% that are big.
Yeah.
That can handle volume. 3% of them only that are really set up to handle volume and play in that volume space. So, and when I say that, I mean major retail and big volume offshore. Then we've got a group that are middle of the road. And I see Grandad Jack's as sort of middle of the road. We're not a volume player. We do enough volume we're bigger than a lot of the others, but we're not the biggest. And there's a big group of us. And then we have the end, which is the majority of the ADA members.
Yeah.
I would pick at a really good guess, 80% of the ADA members in this country are at that. They're not the middle, they're not the big volume, but they're everything else. Those brands are going to, those distilleries are going to probably survive pretty well, right? Especially now that we've managed to get to 350 excise free, because the reality is they're not going to make enough spirit and sell enough spirit to ever pay excise tax.
Yeah, I think with the Australian federal government here 2 years ago, they increased the annual excise rebate from $100,000 a year to $350,000 a year. That was a game changer for the industry, particularly those, as you said, the 80% of the members in the Australian Distillers Association that are at the more lifestyle or hobby end. Yeah. That rebate now allows them to actually make a decent living.
Yeah, it does, and it's really been good for them. What it's not good for is brands like ourselves that sit in that middle space. So we're not big enough for volume.
Yeah,
so it's never going to get the margin in major retail. So I think if brands that are sitting in that space, if they're not really thinking about two major areas, so direct to the consumer model and export, I don't see how they're going to survive.
Yeah.
They're not going to do enough volume. They're stuck in the middle, right? Their overheads are at a reasonable level. They're a real business. They're employing several people, but they're going to have to be careful.
How big are your stills?
We've got a 1,200 litre still on the Gold Coast and a little 100 litre still there. And then we've got a 300 litre still in the Brisbane distillery.
Yeah, great. How did you fund the business?
From the sale of my other business. We're very lucky. We don't have bank loans. We didn't have to do anything. And so we're super, super lucky to be able to, especially how it's been with COVID. I think I would hate to, it was hard enough for everyone, but I would hate to think of the people that had borrowed money against their properties or off friends. We've been super lucky like that. We haven't had to, whenever to do it. We built that was the Gold Coast distillery we built with our own funding, 100% our own funding, no bank loans, no overdrafts, no nothing. And then we built the Brisbane distillery purely on the profit we made in the first 3 years from our Gold Coast distillery.
Oh, well done. That's great.
It shows, I think, if that direct to the consumer model, if you get it right, you build a strong brand, it can be really profitable.
And you've recently finished a crowd fund. How many investors did you pick up there and how much did you raise?
We ended up raising 786,000.
Yep.
We got 331 new investors.
Mm-hmm.
And that equates, we sold off less than 4% of the total business.
Yeah.
So we're pretty happy with that. For us though, it was one we wanted, because we've got this direct to consumer model. It wasn't really about the money for us. It was more about what's the easiest, fastest way to create a biggest group as possible of really enthusiasts for our brand. And so we're super lucky now. Now we have, 330 people every single month that are going to love our product. And you would hope if we do our job right and we communicate right with them, that we'd sell, at least half of them would buy something, right? So 150 people. And if you have a look at our what we've been doing with our limited releases, it's really easy for us to scale that limited release from what we've been doing at, say, 150 bottles to 300. And now we have a basis that's sitting there straight away that we can go from, 150 to 300, and it's really costing no more.
Yep.
Yeah, the cost comparison from a production point of view is literally zero. So it's really, really good. And then the really exciting thing for us is that, we now get to have this AGM each year, which is, not just a meeting of our staff and a few drinks. We're potentially our first AGM. We would hope to get at least 600 people. Everyone's going to bring a partner.
Yeah.
So it's a reasonably big event. And then if we use that event as our own mini way of selling something, we'll have one or two really special releases for our first AGM next year. So, what it can do to your business is much, much more effective than actually the money you get.
Yeah, we found that when I was CEO of New Zealand Whisky Collection. I think I was saying to you before we hit record, we raised 700,000 end of 2018. But what we were excited by, after I spoke with the guys at Parrot Dog in Wellington, they raised 2 million in a couple of days. But they picked up 800 shareholders, and I checked with them to see if they were going to be a pain in the ass, and they said no. As long as you communicate quarterly, newsletter, the AGM, exactly what you just said, it was really big for them. But also you've got these loyal brand ambassadors around talking about your brand and getting you into bars and etc. And also obviously, a new sales channel you've picked up. So we found a really good result out of doing a crowdfund.
Yeah, I agree. It's if you look at it from a brand building point of view, it's much more valuable than the cash.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yeah, I would. I love it. It's the people are just nice, and there's, let's be honest, there's not that many industries out there where you get to work with a whole lot of bloody good people.
Yeah.
So, you'd be, and I love it. I love people. I love having a drink and telling stories, and it's the perfect business for telling stories and having a drink. So I love it. Wouldn't do anything different.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Back in 2018, towards the end of 2018, we had there was some liquor licensing rules in Queensland that no other state had. So we literally got to the point we were on the knife edge of losing our liquor license. And the reason is that in Queensland, they had what they called a producer wholesale license. So that license was designed for, wineries, breweries, and distilleries. But unfortunately, we had only had really bigger distilleries in Queensland. And so when we come along, we had this direct to the consumer model. It didn't work for them, right? So what this license legislation had in it was that you couldn't sell more than 2.5% of your total sales per year direct to the consumer. So
what? Oh my God! I'd heard Queensland liquor licensing was an absolute bastard, but that's just
you had to sell 98% of your product to wholesale straight away when you started the business, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So we got some big fines. They, as I said, they threatened. They give us a show cause notice. They threatened to shut us down. They got real close, but so I would say that is the number one most stressful moment we've had. But I've been brought up, my grandfather always said, as I said before, learn the rules so you can play the game.
Yeah.
And so what that forced us to do is it forced me to learn every single line, every rule that was in that liquor license in Queensland for producers. And so then I just started lobbying government and got it, and then talked with our beer colleagues in Queensland, and they've got the same problem. And so we got together, a guy called David Kitchens, who looks after brewers in Queensland, and myself got together, and we just lobbied the state government. And that turned into a brand new license, which we now call the Artist and Producers License. So now we can sell, distilleries in Queensland to sell everything to the consumer they want. There's no restrictions. We now have access to farmers markets in the weekends, which works so well for for the brands that are starting up and are doing, their day job. They can now go to a market in the weekend and do tastings and do events where we never had that before.
Yes.
So it was a horrendous time, but in hindsight, it forces you to learn a lot about something you didn't know about before. And these days I get calls every week from distilleries in Queensland saying, I've had a liquor licensing person and they reckon this. I said, don't worry, I'll fix it for you. No problem.
How long did that take out of interest? If it was end of 2018, how long before that law was changed?
We didn't get that law changed until the beginning of 2021.
Holy shit. Right. So you were, still on the edge over for those 2 years, basically.
So what we did though is we got the Attorney General and the head of liquor licensing to agree on sort of a frozen period.
Yeah.
We explained to them that this is going to ruin this industry. So you need to give us a freeze on that 2.5%. Let's just start with that, and then we'll work through all the other issues like farmers markets and things like that. So we're able to get a freeze, and really that didn't really happen until COVID hit. So in Queensland at that time, we couldn't even sell online.
Insane.
You couldn't sell. A brewery could sell online, but a distillery couldn't. So it was just hindering. So we got that sort of medium freeze period during COVID, and we're able to sell online and do that. And that actually helped us prove to the government and the other stakeholders that it's not that bad. It's all fine. And today it's fantastic. We've still got a lot of work to do. I still work really closely with Liquor Licensing Queensland, state government. Actually, I'm on the steering committee for Liquor Licensing Queensland, along with Hotels Queensland, Clubs Queensland, Pubs Queensland. So now it's really changed. We all, as industry, really get to see what's going on and to fix things before they get out of control, and which is really good.
So with over 30 years in business and several of your own businesses, that was the most stressful point?
That is the most stressful point.
Wow. Yeah.
When you have everything, when you've got, over $1 million tied up in a venue and you've really just started, and you're employing people and they want to get paid every week, and then you're up against this behemoth, which is a state government. It's you just feel like you've got no control, zero control. You just feel like this real little person. Where my experience in business with everything else, if you ever have cash flow issues or whatever, at least you're controlling it. You can take control, make change really quick to fix it. It might stress you for a minute, but after that, it's nothing. But with something like this, when you're up against the state government, it's pretty tough.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
That's a good one. I think you just got to be prepared not to know everything. And I think when you start out in business, you think that you need to be across everything perfect. You need to be the best at bookkeeping, the best accountant, the best at compliance. And what I've learned over the years is you need to be the best at managing people. That's really our job. And my job is really about managing the team and asking enough questions so people keep being creative and moving forward. You don't need to be the best at every single thing in your business. You just need to be really good at surrounding yourself with people that are good at doing stuff that you're not good at doing it.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Oh, people. That's so difficult to get the best people. That is the number one. In our business, people are the number one thing, and without them, we go nowhere. And it's super difficult to get the right people. Even harder now than it was when we started. COVID definitely hasn't helped with that.
No, it brought on the great resignation. I don't know where the fuck everyone's gone.
I wonder too. I wonder. But it's the same. I've been this year. I've been in the US, in Europe, Asia with our distributors, New Zealand, and I'm getting the same thing every single country I've been in. They're all going, we can't get people. Where are all these people around the world?
Yeah. It's one of my sayings. People are the hardest thing in small business, and where the value is at.
Yeah.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
I love the challenge. I love the win. I love kicking those goals, and whether they're short-term wins or long-term wins, it's great seeing everything come together and the team come together. That's the best bit, and we can change quick, as I said before. So when we don't get it right, and we don't get it right all the time, but when we don't, we can change it quick. Which I love that dynamic situation we have ourselves working in.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
For us, we're a family business, so I have to work with family. we all work in it,
Yep.
and I've been used to being being the end of the game, and if I make the decision, that's it. But I have a son who we wouldn't have this business without. He's the brains behind the spirits, and he's won multiple awards around the world. So I have to, one thing I've had to do is learn to respect him for what he does, and the rest of the family in the business for what they do. And then they've had to learn to respect me. And so just because I'm the dad or the husband or the father-in-law, I've been around a little bit, and I know some stuff that they don't know. So for us, that's been the biggest learning curve for us all, to be able to understand where we fit in there. It's not perfect every day. There's days we have arguments, but they always turn out fine. And I think that's important in a family business. You need to be able to not be scared of saying what you think and then working through it. But that's definitely the biggest learning curve I've had.
Just back on awards, I know it's a bit of a marketing thing, but I did sit in on your webinar for your crowdfund, and you mentioned by the end of September you were going to find out, because you're one of the 4 finalists in the world, weren't you? For
World Gym Producer of the Year.
Yep.
Unfortunately, no Australian. There were a couple of other Australian producers as well, and none of us won. I think it was a Norwegian brand won it. So for us, it was a blooming honour as a small brand to be nominated World Gym Producer of the Year, which is pretty incredible.
To get down to the last 4, that's amazing.
Yeah, but it just tells us we're not the best yet. So we've got to do things better.
Yeah. The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
The number one habit? There is no such thing as a day off. I've listened to so many things over the years and conferences and podcasts that you got to have work-life balance. That is absolute bullshit when you run your own business. There's no, especially in this industry, we're a 7-day-a-week business, and you've got to graft away at it, and it's really not going to be an asset until the day you don't have to be there. And until that point, it's just a bloody liability. And there ain't no days off, and you think about it all the time. You wake up in the night thinking about it. You think about it over coffee in the morning. It's very difficult. So if you think there's this great thing about work-life balance in a small business, then you are living under a rock.
Jump over to growasmallbusiness.com and leave your details to get a short 2-minute email I send on Fridays to help small business owners like you become better leaders. I include some reading or professional development resources I've discovered in the last week. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice? Hang on, I have to start that again. Sorry, mate. Hang on. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
I think the mistake we made early on is we tended to try and employ people that had the skill. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But once we had some key people in our business, we really shifted like overnight, and we decided we're not going to be continuing to employ people for the skill they have. We're going to employ them for the attitude.
Yep.
Because it's bloody hard to teach someone attitude, but it's way easier to teach someone a skill. So once we'd got the key people in place, like we have a head of drinks, Mika, who does all our cocktails for our venues, all our training for our team. She works in R&D as well. So once we'd got that person, we knew then for our hospitality team, we could get people with attitude. That would be a win. And Mika and the team can teach them how to make great drinks.
Yeah.
So and we do that today. We 100% hire on attitude, not on skill.
Totally agree. There's 2 things I look for in recruitment: attitude and aptitude. They don't have to have the experience, but as long as they're smart, they can pick things up with good training and coaching, and they've got the right attitude, then you're going to build an A team.
Yeah, I agree.
What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help the growth?
I think it comes back to what my grandfather told me when I bought my first business. He told me there's 2 things in business, and if you hear one or both of these, don't deal with them. First thing, if someone tells you they're the boss, they're not the boss. Someone tells you they got money, they got no money. If you have either one of those 2 things, we run the business like that, so that I don't have boss on my shirt or on my email, or you don't need to tell you the boss. If you're going to build a great culture within a team, you have to build it so that everyone has respect for each other, and that everyone understands that we all do a different job. We're on the same level, but we do a different job and we have different responsibilities. And I think to have a team that are not afraid to tell you what they think, and to not hide things and be upfront and honest, then you create this system that just works amazingly. And we do two really important things. Every 2 months, we have what we call family barbecue. So we bring everyone in from both venues, both locations, and we come down to the Gold Coast usually, and we bring the whole team and we put them in a hotel down there, and we have what we call family barbecue, where myself and my wife cook barbecue. Everyone gets to eat and talk to each other and drink whatever they want, have a bloody good time. And we do that every 2 months, and people look forward to it. And the other thing we do is our Christmas party. Our Christmas party has never gone for less than 24 hours.
Right.
So myself and my wife design the Christmas party every year. We don't tell the team. All they know is they to bring an overnight bag, and we put them all on a bus and we take them somewhere and show them different experiences and have some fun. And our team, come August each year, you hear everyone around the office and in the distilleries talking about, oh, what are we doing for the Christmas party? So it just keeps that going. It's bringing all the team together outside of work, having a heap of fun. Fun is important.
And just back on your point there about open, honest communication, I chair the second largest craft brewer here in Tasmania. We had a great general manager start 2.5 years ago. He's quite experienced, ran quite a lot of other businesses, and was a national sales manager for 17 years for a big brewery. And early in the days, we were getting used to working with each other, and we've got a pretty good rapport. But I made a request that I wanted him to bring a report to the next board meeting. He sent me back this polite email, I don't know, 3 paragraphs or 4. And he rang me later that day. He usually rings me most days. And he said, I could have just replied to that email with 2 words, which obviously fuck off, because it was operational overreach. I shouldn't have been dabbling. It's very hard when you step out of the business and you're sitting on a board to not want to tinker and dive into things like that. But, the fact that he could be very frank with me, it just, I think, helps prove that it's great culture and helps with the business.
And a lot of things, when you're the manager and you're not, if you're not necessarily in that role, right? It's very hard to get context on why that person's done that certain thing. So a lot of the time you just have to understand it, and then you go, wow, that's I understand, And I think having a business that's people are not afraid to talk is really, really valuable.
Yeah, otherwise they start hiding mistakes and fuck ups, and that just spirals down.
Yeah.
This one might be a short answer. Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I haven't. And I don't try to.
Yeah.
I am 100% focused on this business. And I probably, don't get to spend as much time with my friends that I'd like to, but that's the choice I've made.
Surely you'd be spending a shit ton of time with your friends. They're all coming to your distillery now.
Yeah, I see them all the time. We have
as customers.
We have all these customers that, a lot of the regulars have become good friends.
Yep.
But it feels like work. If I'm on the venue, it feels like work to me. It doesn't. It's not like having a dinner party at home with your mates. It's a different thing. So yes, it's not going to the office and talking to your colleagues. It's a lot more fun than that. But it's always work.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
Not in the last few years, none. I did a lot when I was working in the public industry, in the corporate sector. A lot of business, stuff there, coaching, development, MBA type stuff there. But since I've gone out on my own, I don't. In fact, I'm probably really the wrong person to talk to. I'm an absolute old school bastard like that, where I feel that you learn the most doing the job, and I'm confident enough that I can manage the people to do the best job they can. Not that they'll always listen to me, and sometimes you got to let them make a mistake to learn. But it is the best way. But we're not all the same, right? Some people love that educational, degree type context about having to really study. But I've never hired anyone that's been at university that's been an absolute champion at what they did.
Yeah.
And I've hired a lot of people over the years. Most of the people haven't been. They've just been bloody good grafters and really good at what they do.
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
I had a really good boss couple of times. The same guy actually. He was the CEO of the public company I worked for. He was really, really good. A guy called Phil Amos, based in Sydney. So he not so much a mentor in the way of like pointing you in the right direction, but a mentor in the terms of, teaching you that it's okay to make a mistake, but just put your hand up and go, I've made a mistake. This is how I'm going to fix it. And I've carried that through my life. Like none of us are perfect and we're all going to make mistakes. But if you admit to it and work out how the bloody hell you're never going to do it again, you're going to be way better at what you do.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
We don't. We have a external CFO that we use. Once a quarter, we get together with him and just go over, and it's really good. It's actually really good from my point of view to get that sort of fresh look, because when you're in the business every day, it's easy to get tunnel visioned, and it's really nice, once a quarter to be able to sit back and see someone else's view on it.
Yep.
I love being challenged by them. I love them asking me questions on why this is happening, why is that happening. It keeps me alive and keeps me focused.
You're one of the few we've had on that's exited a business. You've done that a few times now. You got any advice for our audience thinking about exiting or when they should be thinking?
I think it depends on what you want to do. I haven't, in both cases when I've exited businesses, it wasn't the plan to. It just happened. I'm a firm believer in that if you wake up every day in business and you just focus on money, you're never going to see it. You need to get up, and that's the same with an exit plan, right? You need to just get up every day and do the absolute best you can do. And a consequence of that will be money and potentially an exit opportunity. But if you focus the other way, it'll never, ever happen.
Yeah. But David, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Obviously, cash. As you grow, you need more cash, more inventory. That's the challenge. You always need that, and that's why you really have to understand the numbers. I see. We've been lucky enough to work with over 10 other distilleries that have come into our distillery, and we've helped them set up their own. And time again, I see the same thing. They don't understand the margin, and they don't understand what in our industry, what that gross profit needs to be from a percentage point of view. And if you don't get that, you don't generate enough cash to grow. But if you do get it, you can easily generate enough cash to grow.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Don't have one.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I don't. I love not professionally, but I love listening to sport podcasts. I like anything that's team involved, sports people. I really like it because to be a great athlete, you really have to put everything into it, and I think that's no different with business.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Think 100% about your brand first.
Final and my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out over 30 years ago?
Belt up tight, because you're going to be in for a hell of a ride.
Great. Thank you very much for your time today, David. Really pleased that we were able to get you on and got a lot of value out of what you've shared with us. Congratulations to you and Luke and the family and the wider team for the growth and where you're going, and really appreciate time and hope to have you back on in a couple of years.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Troy. Have a great rest of the week.
And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.